All right, guys. So this is a special edition of Black Conservative Perspective with Mr. Kenneth Harper, who is running for a Senate seat in North Carolina. Now, I usually don't do videos like this, guys, but I'm trying to make my channel a little bit more legitimate, right? We talk a lot about, the daily news and what's going on with current events, but I'm also politically involved to a certain extent. And I met Mr. Kenneth Harper at a GOP town hall event in Durham, North Carolina, in which he did a very good job, right? He impressed me with a lot of his answers. He actually came in second at the straw poll there with 38 votes, finishing behind Mr. Mark Walker, who I believe is already in Congress. So that's great. He was previously in Congress?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's great, right? That's good for him. That Senate seat that he's running for is the seat that Richard Burr currently has. He's going to retire. Now, I believe that President Trump has, or former President Trump has endorsed Ted Budd for that seat. And with that being said, my first question to you, Mr. Harper, is tell me about your background. Why are you conservative? Why are you running for the Senate seat? And how are you going to separate yourself from the competition?
Well, first of all, Greg, again, thank you just for having me on your show. It is truly an honor to speak to your guests today. My initial background is I am an entrepreneur and a business owner. I'm from High Point, North Carolina. And about 25 years ago, I started knocking doors for the Kirby Vacuum Company. And it was an amazing experience as an entrepreneur. But what I found was I didn't understand how money worked. And so I found myself owing the IRS $8,000. And I finally got a CPA and learned about the tax code. And my CPA informed me that you don't owe the IRS $10,000, $8,000. The IRS owes you $10,000. And from that perspective, I really wanted to learn about financial services because I was tired of robbing Peter to pay Paul. And I was tired of having more month than I had money. And I saw that ticker tape running across my TV every night, but I wasn't able to participate. And so about 15 years ago, I started and I received my insurance license and securities and investment license. And so for the last 15 years, I've been working with individuals and small businesses, teaching them different strategies, how to save, how to invest their income. And my current company is called HARPCO Benefits Alliance, and HARPCO stands for Helping African Americans Resolve Problems and Creating Opportunity. And so from the perspective of being conservative, I was raised in a home with a pastor, and I was raised with Christian morals and values. My dad has been in the ministry now for over 4 decades, and so really those Christian values were instilled in me from birth, and so. I was a conservative before I knew I was a conservative. Nonetheless, my business allowed me to actually go into different arenas. And because I took HARPCO initiatives working throughout the state of North Carolina, where I actually worked in prisons, in schools, and churches, in a demographic where you're primarily talking to African Americans, you're going to run into some Democrats. And so when I was working out in the community, I initially really was meeting some of the North Carolina Democrats. And then eventually I found myself at an event in New York City with Rainbow Push Coalition under Reverend Jesse Jackson. And that event basically paralleled my stint of working in the Democratic Party for about 4.5 years, where I was a lot of times in New York City, attending their events, doing a lot of networking out in Silicon Valley. And eventually when I lived in Atlanta, I was asked to be on the board for Reverend Jesse Jackson's organization in Atlanta. And so I became frustrated with a lot of the policies that I saw in place that truly were not helping minorities. And so I became really disgruntled and as a board member, and I let them know that. And I started researching Donald Trump because I didn't initially vote for Donald Trump. I basically became, in this last term, I really looked at what he did, what he stood for, and I looked at my business, how it had grew year over year under Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. And so when I really saw who he was and what he stood for, and how the media had misconstrued so much of his policy and the actions that he was taking, it really began to change my mind. And that's when I really became over into the Republican Party.
Awesome. So with that being said, how do you plan on separating yourself from the competition? Because you don't have the Trump endorsement, and you're also running against other seasoned politicians like Pat McCrory, right, who's also in that race as well. How do you plan on separating yourself?
Well, number one, differentiating myself. I think really the Republican Party in itself needs some allies. They need some candidates who actually can score on the offensive. Right now, the Republican Party is completely on the ropes of the election, on the ropes from January 6th. I mean, pretty much right now, the Republican Party within itself needs candidates who can actually begin to bridge the gap in the community. So the fact that I actually cut my teeth in the Democratic Party gives me an opportunity to, number one, go into arenas that many Republicans are not going into and speaking to. I'm receiving emails right now from non-affiliates and independents, and from Democrats, because strategically they want to know, what is it that you see that we don't see? And so, number one, we're taking an educational approach. And I believe really the endorsement from President Trump, as far as I've heard and what I consistently hear as I travel around the state in the GOP, is that, number one, that endorsement came way too early. Matter of fact, I'm in Cary, North Carolina. I just spoke to a group of about 150 women. It went exceedingly well. And one of the things that they consistently spoke about is they really didn't appreciate President Trump's endorsement, because they said we can actually make our own decisions on who we want to support, and we want to get to know this individual. And when President Trump made that endorsement, I was in the room at that dinner, and it turned heads. And because I had spoke, and it went over exceedingly well. And I apologize if there's some background noise. I'm in a I'm in a country club, and I think they're cleaning up. I do apologize, but we're all over the state campaigning right now, so I apologize. So when that endorsement came through, it rolled heads, and I had so many people coming up to me, giving me their business card, because they said, "Hey, Kenny, we don't really know Ted Budd, and we don't know you either, so we don't have anything to lose." Yeah. So really, in retrospect, it has given me a great opportunity. And one of the biggest things I think that people are tired of is really plastic polyurethane politicians who want to pad their pockets and use political propaganda against the people. I think we are in a season where it is time for people that maybe don't have any political experience in office per se, but truly have connected in the community and have a track record of being out in the community, and also can bring a different perspective. Because really, the Republican Party, if you really think about it, needs to rebrand itself. Okay. And because I had that experience in the Democratic Party, I can tell you that the out in Silicon Valley, okay, Silicon Valley is literally flooding tens of millions of dollars into the Democratic Party, into strategic candidates. And this within itself, this within itself really gives the Democrats an option to, number one, infiltrate schools, infiltrate churches, okay? And a lot of different organizations that, in essence, Republicans have not put their name out there. Mm-hmm. And so what I believe that I could bring to the table is really a way of connecting even the candidates who I'm running against right now. Sadly, and this is something that white men tell me every single day, because I'm just kidding. We're gonna keep it real, man. Yeah. This is what white men tell me every single day. Kenneth, you can say things right now in this environment that we cannot say. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so from that perspective, what I believe is this: the Republicans are gonna have to get smarter about strategically who they put in the front of the room, so they can begin to be on the offensive and to build a stronger party, re-galvanize the party, and also talk about the historical references of the Republican Party, because we have been on the right side, even from the very beginning. and give people, non-affiliates, and even those Democrats who are disgruntled right now with what's going on, give them the opportunity to see that, hey, the Republican Party is a viable option. So I didn't join the Republican Party, Greg. The Republican Party is going to join me.
I like that. I like a lot of what you said, right? I think what you said about how the Republican Party needs to go on offense, that's something that I talk about all the time on my channel, right? They stay playing defense on January 6th, you know what I'm saying, on the election. It's like, bro, I describe the analogy like this, right? I say Democrats take layups and miss them. Republicans just, they pretend like they're standing in the way, right? That's basically what happens. Okay, that's what happens. And a lot of times they move out the way, let Democrats take layups. Democrats just miss layups. So that's what's happening right here in politics. So I agree with that. And I also think that the Republican Party definitely needs a little bit of a rebrand, definitely for sure. And I really liked your answer, because I think that, you know, you definitely talking about things that I think are true, and that are really going to help the Republican Party evolve and to expand the base. That's something I always talk to my audience about too, is how important it is to expand the base. Okay. You got to win elections, right? You got to, if you want the policies that you want, you got to win. So I do like that answer a lot, but we're going to move forward in the interview just for the sake of time here. And the second question is about infrastructure. Okay. So, right now, the Democrats want to push this $3.2 to $3.5 trillion families plan on top of the $1.2 trillion bipartisan infrastructure package, right? That's supposed to be infrastructure. And the 3.2 trillion, 3.5 trillion, that's supposed to be a bunch of other policies that the Democrats want that don't really have anything to do with infrastructure. Okay. Things like, child care, expanded tax credit, stuff like that.
Right.
Now, I do want your opinion on the Democrats' infrastructure plan. And I also want to know whether or not you would have signed up, and would you vote for this bipartisan $1.2 trillion infrastructure plan that the Democrats and the Republicans seem to be coming together on?
Well, I think one of the biggest issues with that plan is that a bulk of that plan really doesn't have anything to do with infrastructure. Sadly, we're in a season where they really are bundling major bills worth trillions of dollars and implementing different things that don't have anything to do specifically with the main element that we're actually discussing, which is infrastructure. And also, really, a lot of the things in the bill within itself are impeding upon and infringing upon our civil liberties. Like, for example, I saw one thing in the bill where all new electric cars, you would have to actually do a breathalyzer every time you get in your car if you're leaving a restaurant. I mean, some of the things that we're seeing in these bills, to me, are completely frivolous, make no sense as it relates to the actual infrastructure of building our country. Not only that, but if we continue to pass bills that go into the trillions and trillions of dollars, and we don't hold our elected officials physically responsible for how this money is going to be paid back, and the burden that taxpayers will pay in the future, then we're actually setting ourselves up for failure, because we cannot continue to pass trillion-dollar bills without eventually sometime in the future with a major tax hike and a major tax increase, because otherwise our government will become completely insolvent and unable to pay its debts. So no, I would not support this bill. I believe that it needs to go back to the drawing board. A lot of it, the pork, needs to be removed completely from the bill, and analyze really from the perspective of what we're actually doing as far as infrastructure, and lay it out and make sure that it is strengthening our roads, strengthening our bridges. Okay. giving us the infrastructure that we need for the next 100 years in our country, that also is going to be efficient from the perspective of our automobiles. You know, even if you look at one of the first things that Joe Biden did with the Keystone Pipeline, you know, which was a way for us to become more efficient here in the United States. He literally shut that off, and look what happened to inflation, and look what happened to our gas prices. So right now, we are in a major inflationary market heading towards stagflation. I believe the ghost of Jimmy Carter is about to visit us. And so in retrospect, no, I would not support this bill. And I believe that Republicans also need to be held accountable, because they have been spending trillions and trillions of dollars. We have right now, we have employers and businesses that need employees, but our government has incentivized workers to actually sit on the couch because they get more money in unemployment benefits than they would actually working in a job. So right now, I feel like fiscal responsibility has flopped on its head, and we need legislators that actually understand economics 101.
Got you. So just to be clear for the audience, the $1.2 trillion bipartisan infrastructure package, you would vote no on. You would vote no on.
That's correct. Okay. Yes, that's correct.
Thank you, sir. Third question, election integrity. Do you believe that GOP voting laws / vote ID laws are discriminatory against minorities?
Greg, I don't think they are discriminatory towards minorities, because I don't think it's unreasonable to ask American citizens when they come into the voting booth to show ID that they say they are who they are. It's no different than if we took a check in the bank and we wanted to cash that check, we would be asked to show ID, maybe two forms of ID, in order to receive those funds. You know, as a United States citizen and as an American, that we all have the right to vote. And we believe that, I believe this should be a bipartisan issue, that everybody is concerned that our elections are conducted with integrity and with honesty, and that the candidates are receiving their credit that's due, and that every constituent vote should count. And so our process, it should be a universal process that everyone is concerned about, regardless of your political affiliation. You should be concerned that our process is done equitably from the perspective of everyone vote counts. You should, number one, identify who you are, that you are the person you say that you are. And this should be a transparency where we actually can see a tally of the votes in a reasonable time frame, especially in this day and age of technology. I think it's problematic when we draw out long elections over days or weeks, retallying, or really drawing out the conclusion. You're leaving people in the dark, and you're leaving their minds for questions of, you know, is my vote being counted? Is the process thorough? Is it compliant? And is it legal? So that would be my take on that question. I hope I answered it effectively.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, this, again, obviously is a very important issue to, you know, GOP voters and whatnot. And I think you gave a great answer in terms of, you know, how the Democrats are trying to frame this issue of vote ID as a race issue, when it's really about election integrity, right? It's about making sure that people who are supposed to be voting can vote, and their votes are counted, right? And people who are not supposed to be voting basically can't vote. Their votes aren't being counted, right? Absolutely. And I mean, for whatever reason, the Democrats think that this is racist, right? When, you know, the Supreme Court has said it's not racist. Okay. I mean, you know, you had Representative Nancy Mace come out and basically go to town on the fugitive Texas Democrats, whom was testifying in Congress about how the Texas election integrity bill is supposed to be racist. And she literally went through statistic after statistic after statistic, showing that, like, no, this is, Black people can vote just fine. I mean, if anything, you have a problem with women voting in Texas more than you have a problem with Black people voting in Texas. So I just find it interesting how the Democrats keep running with this conspiracy theory. That's what I call it in regards.
I call it identity politics.
Yeah, identity politics. Yeah. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it. The fourth question here is about immigration. Federal officials have logged more than 1.1 million apprehensions at the U.S.-Mexican border this fiscal year. What solutions do you propose in order to fix the immigration crisis?
Well, first of all, we didn't have an immigration crisis when the former president Donald Trump was in the office because, number one, he had initiated many policies that begin to protect our borders. We didn't have hundreds of thousands of people in flooding our countries, and we had to remain in Mexico policy. That's one of the first things I believe that needs to be reinstated. I believe Sandra Blackburn out of Tennessee, Senator Blackburn actually is Marsha, thank you. Apologize. Marsha Blackburn. She is writing legislation to reinstate that policy be reinstated. And if you really look at what took place, is to me, we incentivized illegal immigrants to come in the United States of America by reversing all the policies that were working. First and foremost, the border wall was almost completed. Joe Biden halted construction for the border wall almost immediately upon taking office. He also reversed President Trump's policies that number one were minimizing the number of illegal immigrants coming into the country. And this is a massive problem from the human trafficking to sex trafficking to large amount of fentanyl coming across our borders. And so I believe that also the Biden administration has haphazardly taken an approach that to bring these people into this country, because I believe they want comprehensive immigration reform and give these people a quick path to citizenship in order that they can, number one, get more votes and also control those who are voting. So I just think that this is a evil tactic and a form of deception, because why would you reverse things that were already working? We didn't even have this problem. This was a problem that the Biden administration created from day one.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think that honestly there's a lot of truth there, because the Biden administration, they encouraged people to come, right? During the primaries, him and Kamala was like, come. Okay, they made it a humanitarian issue because they wanted to.
Nor would she even go down there and visit the border.
Oh yeah.
I mean, she wouldn't even go down. That was Joe Biden assigned her to actually go and handle the situation, and she refused for weeks on end.
Yeah.
Okay, why the problem just was exacerbated, and you're overworking our border patrol. Our towns have been overrun. Residents are, and not only that, in the middle of a pandemic. So you're asking us to take a vaccine because we're in the middle of a pandemic, but you won't even control the masses of people that are coming into this country. Listen, we were born at night, but it wasn't last night. This doesn't even make any sense. What we're seeing in front of our eyes, because if you truly were trying to protect the citizens of the United States from COVID-19, the first thing that you would have did was secured our borders. You would not have, and not only that, not only when these people came into the country, you didn't require them to take a COVID-19 test, but then on top of that, you're busing many of these people all across the United States. Okay, so I just think that this is a morbid failure of the Biden and Harris administration.
Thank you. I appreciate that. The next question. This was actually something that I think one of the questions you stood out on at the GOP town hall in Durham. It's about student loan debt. We are $1.7 trillion. There's $1.7 trillion of student loan debt by the end of 2020. Progressives and also some establishment Democrats like Chuck Schumer, they want to wipe away student loan debt, but that's not particularly popular with the GOP. Right. What is your solution to the student loan debt crisis? Because the GOP needs a solution, because it is a very popular issue with younger voters.
It is a very serious problem that will impact the quality of lives for millennials and the younger generation who basically wanted the opportunity to go to college, earn a degree, but in many cases, they've been saddled with debt that in many cases it's hard for them to pay that debt back simply because of the job market. Not only that, but the astronomical costs associated with actually going to college. And some of the research that I cited for that question, there was in the Wall Street Journal, there was a gentleman that was a part of Sallie Mae, and he talked about how Sallie Mae and the government and even private investors increased the cost of college beyond inflation. And so in many cases, the cost for college tuition has been so far outreach that many of these people have been saddled with what we call usury, where you actually put so much interest on a loan that an individual can never pay it back. Meanwhile, our government was earning interest on this. You got private endowments now worth billions of dollars. Okay, you have investment companies that participated in this process and earned the tax deferred growth and capital gains and dividends. And so, really, in retrospect, I believe one of the solutions is people that have put these loans in place that have made it impossible for some of these people to even qualify for a home because their debt to income ratio is out of whack. I mean, it doesn't make sense for me to go to college, earn a degree, and then when I get out of college, because of my debt, I can never actually own a home, or I can never get married just simply because I'm saddled by so much debt. I believe that one, we as the government need, in the federal government, need to hold many of these big endowments and some of these investors accountable for the massive amount of money that they earn in income and capital gains and appreciation, but was saddling that as predatory loans to lock people into a situation they can never get out of. I don't believe in debt cancellation, but these loans were predatory loans in many cases that many of these individuals didn't have proper counseling to understand the perspective of, number one, how I'm going to pay this loan back. Many of the jobs compared to the debt that's there doesn't even adequately pay enough income to actually pay that debt off. So I believe the people who got rich off this process, we need to hold them accountable because these loans, in many cases, for some individuals, not all, okay, but we're really speaking in terms of the student loan debt that were utilized to put people in a situation where they can never pay it off. And we have to address that. But I think the people who earned the most money and created these schemes to lock people in, they need to be held accountable.
Wow, that's honestly a different answer that I've heard from basically anybody in regards to trying to solve this student loan debt crisis. So let me make sure I understand exactly what you're saying. What you're saying is we need to go after the financial institutions that have benefited from these predatory loans in regards to student debt.
Absolutely. One of the gentlemen in the interview said at the height of his zenith working with Sallie Mae, he had investments of upwards of $300 million. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so how is it that elites are, number one, making astronomical income off of individuals who truly, it's not that they don't want to pay their debt. That is, and that's my issue. It's not that the students aren't willing to pay their debt. They've just been put in a situation, almost they were set up for failure from the beginning in many cases, because if we don't have proper debt counseling, for example, maybe some of those individuals, if they would have known, understood the job prospects that will be available compared to the amount of debt that they had to pay back, and compared their job prospects upon graduation, and understanding the interest and the accumulation and the principal. See, financial literacy is really a major issue that has not been taught in America. And so to me, these high school students going into college, and many of these parents I don't feel they were given the necessary tools to understand the end result and the consequences of accepting some of these loans. But on the other end, these loans, when they were written and when they were strategically designed, the people already knew the end result. And so if you are trying to do me harm, and you know you're doing me harm, and in essence, and you're going to make a gain off that, that's called usury. And that within itself is something that needs to be penalized. And I believe that these endowments that have billions of dollars now, still earning interest, still earning capital gains, they need to be brought to the table to help pay down this 1.2 trillion and make a plan that is feasible for many of these Americans who are just trapped under this student loan debt to be able to pay it back where that it makes sense. And also not saddling innocent taxpayers who didn't go to college with this $1.7 trillion.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Next question here. This is about the U.S. total debt, the debt that our country has. The U.S. is $28 trillion in debt. Would currently have a $3 trillion deficit. Democrats are essentially looking to spend trillions of more dollars, just like we talked about, although our debt to GDP ratio is the highest since World War II. Do you think that this is something that we should be concerned about? Why or why not? And if so, what initiatives would you support to fix this problem?
Sure. Next time I'm gonna make you email me these questions.
I'm sorry. I told you it wasn't gonna be easy.
No, it's all good. No, that's a very serious question. And honestly, every United States Senate candidate should have an answer as it relates to the deficit, that the steady growing deficit, which in essence, at some point in time, we are going to have to pay back this major debt. Even if you look on your Social Security statement, it says potentially by year 2041 that the Social Security, if changes aren't made, would be broke, would not have any money to pay out Social Security. And if you also look at the fact that we have less people working now paying into taxes versus those who are actually retiring, which is really going to strain that system. And so where we are with fiscal responsibility in the United States is really a very unfortunate place. And if we don't begin to put strategies in place to create a balanced budget amendment to begin to pay down our debts, then one, we could potentially become insolvent. We potentially could have a major crash, like a Great Depression, with the massive amount of debt that our children will be saddled with. It really will make for not a good quality of life. And the United States needs to do, in my opinion, look at a convention of states where, number one, the convention of states allows where at least 34 states can come in collectively together in consensus, agreeing on the same issues, and call a convention for an amendment to the Constitution. And I believe that amendment for the Constitution to balance the budget as a priority. And the Convention of States allows for this to happen when you feel that your government has become dysfunctional or even tyrannical. And we can't continue in this trajectory because our children's children will be paying this debt off. And at some point, to pay that debt off, our tax rates are going to have to be increased astronomically. And if that happens, you may put some Americans in a situation where you decrease their net worth. They're in a situation where they may not be even to make ends meet because the tax hikes would have to be that high. So we need a balanced budget amendment. I believe the Convention of States is the best way to go about this, because right now it doesn't appear to me that balancing our budget is very important to Republicans or Democrats, and that is very concerning.
Yeah, I definitely hear you on the future tax hikes. That's why I'll always, tell my audience, hey, if you ain't got a Roth IRA, you might want to, get a Roth IRA, particularly if you're younger, go ahead and lock in that lower tax rate right now.
Absolutely.
Instead of in the future. That way you can get it tax free.
Absolutely.
Pretty sure that's something that you talk about quite a bit. But yeah, that's all my questions. I said that they would be difficult, right? It wasn't gonna be no softballs. I hope I didn't really throw you off too much. Is there any?
No, this really helps me as I'm growing, Greg. This is a learning and growing process. This is my first time running for office, and so no, thank you, sir, because it's helping me.
yeah, no problem. I mean, that's the whole point. I'm trying to help you out and get you,
thank you,
on a platform or whatnot. But is there anything that you want to tell our audience that we haven't been able to go over throughout this interview, and let them know how to get in contact with you, or
sure,
how to learn more about you?
Sure, absolutely. First and foremost, they can go to my website at ncvoteharper.com. Again, that's ncvoteharper, HARPR.com. And we are on Facebook, we're on Twitter, and we're also on Instagram. So please follow us there. Also, they can send an email to my campaign to receive our newsletter. We are looking for opportunities to speak all over the state. And I would say initially, this is a great opportunity right now that we have to awaken many people to conservatism and what the Republican Party stands for. I'm also looking for opportunities to speak in churches. We created something called the Church Leader Coalition against HR 5 and the Equality Act, because we truly believe that right now our federal government is really trying to sexualize our society, silence the voice of the conservative, with from the First Amendment to even eliminating our guns and protecting our families, and also even with the indoctrination and the inoculation of our children. And so we're doing educational seminars. And so if you would like for us to come to your city or to your town, because this is a statewide race, we're traveling from tip to tip of North Carolina. We are definitely looking for those opportunities to connect in all communities, because I believe that right now we need to come together and educate. That's one of the things that I'm doing. We're also talking about the Black political history of the Republican Party. A lot of people don't even understand that it was the Republicans who fought for the 13th, the 14th, and the 15th Amendments. The Democrats fought tooth and nail. And one thing that a lot of people don't even understand is they don't even know what a real insurrection is. A real insurrection took place in 1898 in Wilmington, North Carolina, when the Ku Klux Klan went and murdered Black people and burned down the town and took over the government. And the federal government did not intervene. That's an insurrection. It was a protest. What happened? A bad protest with some bad actors that happened on January the 6th. So this is the approach that I'm taking to my campaign, an educational approach. And so I would love to connect with you, your group, your church, your association. So please feel free to give us a call. Our number is 336-912-3788. Again, 336-912-3788. And Greg, I'm so grateful for this opportunity, and I wish you much success in your movement of building Black conservative voices. And if there's anything that I can do, I'm truly here to help by any means, shape, or fashion. So thank you, sir, for this opportunity.
Oh, absolutely. I really appreciate you coming up here and talking to my audience. You're probably my first major political candidate. So this is good.
Great.
You're making history on the channel.
I made history.
Yeah, on the channel. So, we'll see. And we'll go from there. But thank you so much. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording. You can just stay up here. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Mr. Kenneth Harper. Again, he gave you the information. You can, check him out. And y'all have a good one.